Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, folks. Today is Thursday, April 6th. We are here for Cluster API Azure CapZ weekly office hours. We are a sub-project of Cluster API and SIG Cluster Lifecycle and inherit the CNCF Code of Conduct. So please be kind to one another. Please use the Zoom raise hand feature to speak. We'd love to hear from all speakers. And without further ado, let me scroll down and read the pre-agenda items. So the first thing we do in our meetings is we like to take time to acknowledge any new visitors who want to speak up and say hi and introduce themselves. So if you wish to do so, please take that opportunity now. I'll mute my mic. Go ahead and raise your hand if you want to say hi. Hi, Nicola, go ahead.
Hi there. Long time no see. I didn't attend CAPZ office hours for quite some time, so I have one topic that I would bring up here. So I don't know. I didn't add it up front to the agenda. I didn't get to create it, but I just created an issue before the meet, so I can maybe just roughly go over the topic after everyone is done with their topics, and then we maybe can continue in Slack afterwards.
That sounds fine. And yes, please feel free to add it right now. You can see the
Awesome.
you can see others doing the same thing right now. So
Okay.
go ahead and
Okay.
jam on
Thank
that. And
you.
that's an open invitation to anyone really during any discussion. If you want to have your meeting or your agenda definitely covered, it's best to put it there in advance. But it's certainly not a requirement.
Thank you. I'll do that. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for saying hi. Anyone else want to say hi? All right. So I'm going to go through this and just remind folks we'll do milestone review at the end of the agenda list. And if you haven't already, you can see folks have added their name to the attendees list up here in the doc. Feel free to do so. I'll go ahead and paste a link to the doc in here in case you don't have it on Slack. Where's chat here? And let's go to agenda item number 1, David T, CAPZ project board views. Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
You're up.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to share my screen, but if you want to just click on the link, it's probably easier to visualize. I'll try and make it quick, but just to drive awareness, we now have all of the open PRs and issues up in this project. And then I've started creating a number of different views that are up there. That one's everything, so it's not that exciting. If you go to, let's just start with manage cluster, which is a little more specific. I'm just getting to manage cluster tagged issues. The advantage of this versus just using regular issues is really that you have a lot more control over a number of different fields and visibilities that you don't in the regular GitHub. So that makes it a lot easier to triage, categorize, prioritize a lot of things. So yeah, and then if you want to go to milestone open, I think that one, is something that might give us, as we do milestone planning, also a little more control as we, look at when you get past the what PRs are open view, and we go to issues, this might give us a little more control in trying to review the milestones. And then PR triage, go to the next tab. So this one is something that is tied to a broader, I would say, initiative that I have on the Kubernetes contributor experience around labels. But in at least on our team and others, there's kind of being established a rough categorization of PRs to know, like which ones actually need reviews and which ones are we waiting on somebody to get back to, and which ones are we, actually blocked on from moving forward for whatever the reason. And ideally, we're moving towards trying to have all of that automated, but at least for now, having the status category in the PR will enable at least us or anyone who's up there to kind of know what's available for, review versus something we're just waiting on. So you don't just keep looking back to the same, PR that is in the same state it was before. So this is a view for that. And, we still have some more categorization work to do there and automation, but that's what that is. I think bugs is pretty straightforward. Same with rotten. Rotten is anything with the rotten life cycle. That's there just to kind of know before something gets closed. We might want to just be aware of it. And then probably one of the most exciting views, which I've done the least amount of work on, but I think is important to call out, is the roadmap WIP view. It is literally a work in process, but what I've done here is started putting items with anything that's tagged with one of the priority tags. There's like 3 different priority tags to kind of be filtered out here. And the idea is that, for roadmap, you don't necessarily, I think it's not really feasible to get every single granular item that goes into everything, but some of the larger items that we want to care about that take a longer period of time, to just get an idea of things of when they might land, and just for planning purposes when they might come in. Of course, all of this is still up for, as this is a community project, it's still up for discussion, collaboration. We do have an actual open roadmap page on the CAPZ book, so that is still true. But this gives us obviously a click deeper into, specific, rough ideas of when we think things might start or end. And again, we're not holding us to these timelines, but just so, for people that are interested can start to get a rough idea of when we think things might happen, and what's ahead. So I will stop there and pause for any questions. Otherwise, we can move on. And again, this roadmap WIP is not like complete right now, but it's, just something that it's a new thing from GitHub Project Beta, and it's kind of nice. I like. Okay.
Yeah, no. Oh, Matt, go ahead.
Matt, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to get in the weeds, but first of all, this is great. I like the presentation a lot. So did you have to hand curate all this, or are these?
So the way it works now is to see that little top left filter there. It says is issue is open, label priority. So effectively right now, if you add one of the priority labels to it, it will show up here in this board.
Okay.
However, if you'll notice that there's the little plus signs there on the left, see those things means that the timeline hasn't been set for the start and end date of those. So therefore, even though those are here, the actual like start end date isn't showing up. So that's why you don't see the longer bar view there.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, it does make it actually pretty easy if you click the plus button, and then you can kind of drag the date range around as opposed to having to type in the date. It makes it a little bit quicker, which is kind of a nice feature.
Cool. Well, yeah, I didn't want to go into the weeds. I'm just staring at one of these that I think probably shouldn't be on the board, this race detector thing. So we can.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we could talk. Yeah, we could talk more about it.
It's like
later.
a nice to have thing, and there's some community member who hasn't touched it in a couple months, so it's probably not worth the effort. But
yeah, I think I just put things in there that were like there was PRs in flight. So, and that we had milestones for. And so I just kind of was, like I said, this is a work in process. I was kind of like, well, if it's already there and it's going to land in the milestone, that's why I put it in. But yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So there's like 3 versions of the priority tag that's built in. There's the backlog is a general one. And there's like and priority long-term, and there's a priority, I think, critical, urgent, or something. So all 3 of those would show up, but I just was defaulting to the general priority backlog tag. Open to feedback if you think something else is there. I just didn't want to add any new tags if I didn't have to. And those were already there, it seemed to make sense to put that on there. And if of course, if it's on the roadmap, it should be a priority, right? Like that should
for sure.
Yeah.
But if we want to edit stuff, should we go through you, or can we mess with it directly, or what's the best way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm flexible there. Obviously, like if you think something's a priority and it's a larger work item, I'm not opposed to to putting on there. You know, there's a lot that's there. And again, it depends on how much granularity we want to go into. I don't plan to, you know, every single thing we have to put on here. But if it's a community effort and we think that's a great thing, I'm open to that as well, but it's not going to be all me. It would have to be a collective effort.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think this looks like a good level to look at. I just see one that's sticking out. So
Yeah.
this is, I like it.
Yeah, the other thing that we could consider, and that just was on the back of my mind here too, is like having a filter for like XL or XXL. That doesn't mean that things that are small or medium shouldn't necessarily be here, but like, you know, likely, you know, those things that are that small are probably going to be done right in a week or whatever, and it's a blip on the bigger, longer timeline. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Whereas the big ones should probably always be here.
Right.
Oh, good stuff. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Good
can-
combo. Yeah, and +1 to Matt's remark. This is really promising.
Cool.
You pave the road. I'll just move the cones over. That's
Right on.
a useful metaphor. All right, cool. So yeah, is there a easy sticky link to this? Not really. Maybe we can add this to once we get this more mature, we can add it to the CAPZ landing readme.md or something like that, just so folks can easily get to it.
Yeah, I think once for the roadmap link, I mean, yeah, once we feel good about the completeness of it to some extent, then we could add it in the book in the roadmap link, if we wanted.
That didn't work. Looks like you need a view.
Yeah, you have to have the view, the full URL link, and
guess
there is
all is a
there
view.
is no, yeah. So each of those are a link, so you can. It's all under one project, but each of those has its own URL. Each view has its own URL, so you can link to the roadmap WIP view.
Cool. I pasted in chat if anybody wants to go explore and add to your bookmarks, favorites, whatever they're called.
Okay, cool.
Great. Thanks, David. Okay, looks like we have someone added this bit of public service announcement that we have no plans for a patch release this week. Maybe I should pause for a second. Is that controversial? Anybody have any concerns about that? All right, cool. So just to remind folks, Matt, go ahead.
Sorry, I raised my hand really late. Just obviously we should be paying attention. I don't think we missed anything, but it makes it feel like maybe there was something we should have cherry picked because there have been a lot of changes going in. So just everybody be aware we should cherry pick aggressively anything that's a bug fix. I think we're good, but I'm just saying. Yeah, Nicola.
Is it just about exclusively cherry picking bug fixes or minor improvements could also go in?
The former. Let's see if I can quickly live
Okay.
stream a link to.
Or documentation is the other thing we allow now, right?
Oh, come on, Safari. All right, so let me see if I can live stream a link to the doc. So is it
It's in contributing.md.
contributing.md, which is not under here? Is it in the link in the root? Yes, it is. Great. So, Nicola, thanks for your interest. I would I think the community would love if you went and read through this. And if you have any questions or issues, feel free to submit a PR with a change or hit us up in Slack. That kind of defines. I mean, I don't want to be super
definitely.
academic. The answer to your question is generally the former.
Yeah,
It's just
definitely.
bug
I mean,
fixes.
yeah, I've read it. It just sounded a bit like maybe with cherry picking more aggressively, it sounded a bit that maybe something more is also cherry picked in addition to bug fixes. So I was just wondering.
Right. No, I think what Matt is probably
deviation from the
suggesting is
rule.
that there have been a lot of bug fixes.
Ah,
recently,
okay,
so.
okay, yeah, I see. Thanks.
Cool. And I just wanted to make a quick note to remind folks if you're unaware. So this line item, where were we? This suggests kind of like we've already reached a decision. The way that these decisions are reached is largely in Slack. Toward the beginning of the week, there's some automation that pops up every week, and then a Slack thread conversation may result from that, and also this meeting. So this assertion of no releases, I would imagine, Matt, is this correct? An outcome of that Slack thread reaching a sort of consensus, like no need for patch release. And
Well,
then we
yeah,
all-
I mean, there's no commits to release, and I noted that in Slack, and then I checked again this morning, and since we have no commits, I assume we're not doing a patch release.
Cool. But that's generally the process. So if you're advocating for a patch release, we want to be sensitive to that current process, Slack plus show up here and raise your needs. Okay, next line item is Willie with a PSA.
Yeah. So just a quick PSA that the PR for merging or bumping cap beta 1.4 has merged. So yeah, just make sure you guys are rebasing on top of main. There's a lot of like random code changes, like some fields got renamed. So just to avoid like merge conflicts, make sure you're rebasing. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just letting everyone know that this is merged. And it's 1.4.1 because there was a kind of emergency bug fix release that we needed to unblock dual stack or IPv6 clusters. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Rock and roll. You summarized and obscured a lot of effort that went into that. So great work.
Thanks.
Made it sound simpler than it actually was. Okay, Nawaz, you have the next agenda item.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. It's more of a question. Since that image builder PR merged, which essentially changes how the network config is configured on Azure VMs, do we want to update or create new CAPZ reference images right away, or do we wait until Kubernetes gets a new version of Kubernetes gets released on April 15th, I guess? Or do we wait for the whole Azure CNI V1, the whole effort to get closed, and then we update CAPZ reference images? Yep.
Just waiting to see if anybody else wants to weigh in. So my response to that is that the key sort of motivating input here is the availability of Azure CNI to CAPZ users. So if we have a way to make that available, then that would preempt the normal requirement for cutting a new image is a Kubernetes release, I think. Maybe Matt will add some more context. If we were able to expose Azure CNI before the next Kubernetes release, it would seem to me that that would be sufficient justification for cutting a new image earlier. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think I was going to say the same thing. If it would help us test or move the Azure CNI effort forward to rebuild the images now, then I think that's a good enough reason to rebuild the images. Otherwise, we can wait a week or two.
Yeah, so the question really goes to you, Nawaz, is Azure CNI something that will be able to be used by users in the next, well, really, we wouldn't expose that. I don't know why I'm looking at my watch, but we wouldn't expose that until the next minor release, which is, someone remind, May 5th-ish kind of thing?
Yeah, around there, first week of May.
Cool. So we'd love to get testing on that as soon as possible. So if we have a way to test it, then that would also, it should all be about that. Does this give you enough information, Nawaz?
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I don't think we necessarily need to create a new reference image because I have some local copies I'm testing with. So I think we can hold off until the whole of Azure CNI effort gets updated and merged. Right, thanks.
Cool. It sounds like a Kubernetes release will happen before that point, so you'll get your new image for free, so to speak. Great. Thanks for doing, this is also a ton of work. Always sounds easy when you can summarize something in a few sentences. That took a few months, so thanks, Nawaz. Okay, thanks for taking notes, whoever's doing this. Nicola, you are up next.
Hi.
We'll go ahead and click through.
Yeah, so I had created this issue just a little bit before the meet. So it's sort of the other side of the coin for private clusters in CAPZ. So currently, when somebody wants to deploy a private cluster, so a cluster deployed to a fully private VNet, which where the API server is exposed with internal load balancer, there is a need for some sort of additional configuration to enable actually access from the management cluster to the workload cluster. And currently in CABZ, there is a support for VNet peering. So there can be peering between the two VNets where the management and workload clusters are deployed. And that way management cluster gets access to the workload cluster itself. Then how the workload cluster is accessed from the outside is another thing. So currently it's a bit out of scope, I think, here in CABZ. Or maybe that same peering can be used in some way. And recently there was a PR to add private endpoints support. I linked the PR there. So I submitted here this issue as a feature request, a suggestion to have private link for API server. So basically with this, we would get a possibility that if we have two clusters where, for example, management and the workload cluster, where the workload cluster is deployed to a private VNet without external access, instead of VNet peering, which quite opens the network there and basically almost merges two networks. Another solution would be to deploy private link in the workload cluster, and that the private link, which is then exposing the API server load balancer, is actually used for connecting to the workload cluster. So that way the access itself is more scoped down. So it's basically exposing specific front ends of the specific load balancer, which is internal. I tried this out in Transform clusters by doing some of the work manually. So it works. There is some, I guess, there's some additional work around DNS, I think, but generally speaking, it just works out of the box. So I don't know how detailed private endpoints implementation is currently in CABZ, but from what I saw, I think it should be able to work with private links that could be implemented. So I just wanted to run this idea by you and see if there are any opinions about it. So I started working on this internally for the POC, a giant form, and I figured it could. When I saw that there is actual support for private endpoints, I figured it could be actually a good addition to CABZ itself. So it's actually implemented in CABZ, and is a CABZ feature and not something done outside of the CABZ, since there is already private endpoint support there. So any opinions, ideas, suggestions?
Cecile.
Yeah, thanks for opening the issue and making it so detailed. I think that's a really good idea. I'm huge +1 on this. I think my only questions are around feasibility, but if you're working on POC, I guess we'll find out soon enough. Definitely let's add this to CABZ as much as possible and in upstream. I think I'm only I haven't looked into this very deeply, but my only question would be around how do you make sure because CABZ itself only creates the workload cluster, so we don't have access to management cluster. So we can't really, the management cluster could be anything, it could be running anywhere. So does any of this setup require anything from the management cluster itself, or is everything set up on the workload cluster side?
Well, yeah, in the specific scenario where we're talking about management cluster using private endpoints and workload cluster using private link, then whatever is managing the management cluster itself, for example, if it is deployed with pivoting, so CABZ itself also manages the management cluster, then the management cluster's Azure cluster CR is the place where private endpoint would be added. So this would be sort of a private link feature for the workload cluster, and then when wanting to access that, to connect to that private link, I believe CABZ would enable that. So not sure how people are actually deploying CABZ out there in production, but CABZ is sort of also managing itself, right? So in the sense it is managing the management cluster as well, if I'm not mistaken. So
So we can't,
unless
yeah.
somebody deployed it differently, right?
yeah, we can't make that assumption, right? Like the management cluster in theory could be running in AWS or for all we know.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. But in theory, in most of the cases, I guess it's running probably in Azure, and there is a CR describing it. But if it's running someplace else like AWS or it can be whatever, yeah, then just deploying the private link will not be enough. That a management cluster deployed in that way connects to it. So in that case, something else is needed, a VPN connection or whatever. So yeah, we're also deploying VPN manually on our side, outside of the CAPZ itself. So there are more few options there. So yeah, VPN, Azure VPN is one of the things that could also be implemented, but it's a story for another day, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the current solution today already requires the management cluster to be in Azure, right? Because the VNet needs to be.
Yeah.
So it's an improvement on the current solution.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Thanks for the feedback.
I'll ask a quick question, then I'll pass it on to Mike. Nicola, is the functionality needed to do this? Does it already exist in CAPZ as of this PR? Did this bring all the required functionality? So we just need to like wire up an end-to-end scenario with the right templates and.
I don't think so. I think so. There are two parts of the story. With private endpoint and private link setup, so there is the service producer, so which is where private link is deployed. So the private link is exposing access to some load balancer, and here the service producer would be basically CAPZ workload cluster, where the service is actually API server, and then the consumers that want to connect to that have to use private endpoints. So there is a need for private endpoints on the consumer side and for the private link on the CAPZ workload cluster side. So currently there is support for one of those two sides, which is private endpoints. So in a scenario where management cluster is also running in Azure and and it is being managed by CAPZ itself, there is already support to configure the management cluster with the private endpoint, so it can access the private link. But there is no feature in CAPZ to actually deploy the private link. So this would add the other part of the setup.
Got it. That's clear. Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, the one thing I wasn't sure about with this is whether or not there was any DNS changes that would need to be required to go along with it. One of the things that held us up from enabling the issue that was out there for the private link to ACR was the associated DNS changes that had to be enabled to make it work. That kind of made it kind of half, CAPZ, half not CAPZ, and got a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. So in this scenario, when the consumer is connecting to the API server, it is connecting to its private IP. So it is talking to an IP in its own private VNet on its own side. So with that in mind, the DNS should be handled on the consumer side. So every consumer which is using the private endpoint should then also resolve DNS somehow that way on its side. That can be implemented in CAPZ. So in the semi-manual POC that we did on the consumer side in the management cluster VNet, we created private DNS zone with that DNS record, and then that DNS zone was linked to the management cluster VNet. So that way, management cluster was able to resolve the regular workload cluster DNS name to its own local IP. So CAPI and CAPZ worked out of the box with existing DNS names there. I can clarify it in the issue and maybe throw in some diagrams and more notes about the DNS. So even in Azure, when you go to the Azure portal and when you try to actually deploy private endpoint, one of the features that you will get there is if you want to integrate private endpoint with your private DNS zone. So I don't know if that can be deployed also as a part of the private endpoint, or the DNS part is deployed separately. So I haven't looked into details how private endpoint works in CAPZ at the moment, So maybe there is already something there, and if not, I think it can be worked on. It can be implemented.
Cecile.
Yeah, another question I just thought of. Do you know by any chance, does this change anything with the internal load balancer API server for like in regards to the hairpin routing issue that is present right now for private clusters?
Yeah, we had fun with that one. It doesn't really, because this is for external access, so it is about accessing the API server from the outside. So yeah, I'm not sure if that could if that issue could be improved somehow with private links. Maybe if the workload cluster itself is somehow talking to the private link, but I didn't try that, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, no worries, thanks.
Cool. Really great agenda item. Thanks for popping in, Nicola. This seems pretty clearly it would be an improvement. Probably not a trivial amount of work, but glad that we've got the conversation started, and thank you so much for this detailed issue.
You're welcome.
Okay, Matt, you've been busy in the meantime. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did some just-in-time things. Yeah, there's a new AZ CAPI release. It doesn't really change anything major, but behind the scenes, it pins some manifests in such a way that will allow us to move another PR forward. So just reminding people that AZ CAPI exists, and it's a real easy way to provision clusters. And if you want to give it a try, there is a new release. And then the other thing I had, this is off topic, but I think more than half of the people here have contributed to Image Builder. So you might want to know we're finally trying to reboot the office hours, and we may get going on Monday, April 24th is the current plan. So if you're interested in getting closer to Image Builder, then you can join us there. I will let people know at CAPI as well. It's just that we just figured it out today. So
cool. So that's Image Builder across all the community, not CAPZ.
No, great. Image Builder in general, which serves many projects, but overall, most of the velocity is in the CAPI related area. That's all. Thank you.
Terrific. Okay, we are at, well, I'll pause for one brief interval of time. Are there any other agenda items before we get to milestone review? Anyone want to bring anything up ad hoc? Okay, we've got a black link, very interesting. All right, so let's first start. Nicola, go ahead.
Yeah, just remember, so when you mentioned the European issue for the private clusters, so when we were trying to solve that one, I mean, we solved it similarly, like it's suggested in the examples in CAPZ repo. But one of the ways to solve that is with using two NICs on the VM. So basically having a dual NIC setup, and I think that CAPZ already has support for multiple NICs. So is that something that could be an interesting solution for the hairpin routing issue?
Go ahead, Cecile.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't looked into that. The support for two NICs was actually just added recently in the last release. So I think it was added for a completely different reason. It was added in the context of being able to work with Azure CNI. So we didn't really think at the time like, oh, this could also be related to helping us with hairpin, but would be worth looking into that.
Yeah, so it could be helpful. So basically the second NIC could be used to, and in order to force all the traffic to the API server through that second NIC, but it requires configuration on the host itself. So instead of modifying a host file on the machines, what is required is adding static routes on the machine. So it doesn't really belong to the CAPZ itself, but it's more like around kubeadm and maybe flat car ignition. It depends what OS is being used. So it's something that could be covered with maybe examples. So I don't know if CAPZ would need some change or implementation there, maybe an improvement in addition to docs and how it could be configured differently so you avoid the actual issue. That is given that the support for multiple NICs in CAPZ enables something like that. So I will look it up, and if there is something that I could add, maybe I'll open an issue or PR directly to add some docs there, because currently we're doing something similar to what is already there in the example. Just that workaround hack sort of for Flatcar, for example, is a bit different because what is out there works for Ubuntu. So there is already some space for improvement in the docs and examples as well.
Sounds good. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, David T, your wish is my command. So we are at milestone review, and just a reminder how this works in practice. We don't necessarily need to proactively tag a PR with a milestone for it to get included before we release, but it can help aid prioritization to do this preemptively, so we can, if we want, this essentially is I would say a gesture of wanting, like aspirationally wanting this to be included in the milestone. So let's go in and look for any PRs that we want to land before May 2nd. This list should be open PRs without a milestone tag, and tag them so that we have a better chance of not deprioritizing it. Okay, I'm just going to go in order here. This is opened up overnight, so I'm not sure about this. Is anybody familiar with this?
I took a quick look. I think we should include it. It's one of the recommendations for the CAPI 13214 migration.
Cool. All right, great. I'm going to skip over this work in progress PR, and this also doesn't look like necessarily functional stuff that would go into a minor release. I'll add this because I feel like this is almost close to kind of touristy. Looked at that one a little bit. Thanks, Willie, for reviewing that. This, I feel like, actually, I'm not current. Is this definitely going to be merged? Has anyone besides myself looked at this in the last like 24 hours? I know Mark and James are kind of going back and forth. No, so I'll not do that without more context. Nawaz, do you want to speak to the flat car load balancer test stuff? Is that the kind of stuff we definitely want to include in the next release?
Well, so I think NVIDIA, sorry, I didn't get his name right.
Mateus is actually, NVIDIA is definitely his avatar.
His
so.
handle, yeah, Mateus.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So Mateus is working on it. I created this to show that, yeah, the flat car tests have always been failing and we haven't been catching it. So he's working on it. So this will more likely be just a test update. And we are having a conversation over there on the PR saying, what could I make the changes so that the test could pass? So this should be in the upcoming release, I guess.
Does this have a link to the functional fix?
I think so. There is.
Where is it? Here?
Yeah.
Is this an issue or a PR?
Yeah.
Issue. Do we have a PR reference?
I think he does not have a PR yet. We are just trying to see if the code change he suggested would make the errors go away, but let's see. I still have to get back onto it.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and add this issue to the milestone. That seems like the best we have for now. And
Thank you.
we'll happily also add this as well. So we have a declaration of priority here. Okay, cool. Has anyone been looking at this trivia image scan PR? Do we know the velocity
Nicola's
here?
still got his hand up.
Oh, Nicola, go ahead. Or is it up from earlier?
Oh, maybe it was.
He raised it.
Oh, no, it's
Cool. Anyone have any thing to say about the trivia image scan PR here? Okay, I'll go ahead and,
Sorry, Jack. I think I reviewed it. Trivi image scanner. Yeah, I think that could also go into the current milestone.
okay, cool. So this is like a security vulnerability scan, right? I've seen this in CAPI as well, so it looks like we're standardizing to this. All right, this I'm gonna mark in. I feel like this is making progress. Please shout out if that's wrong. Matt, is this is this a more longer term thing? Or is this,
I don't think it's gonna take too long, but there's no reason to put it on the milestone. There's no deadline, so let's just leave it, I guess.
okay, cool. I know Cecile has done some reviewing on this. I looked at it, and I know Willie's done some reviews. I think this is something we want to land, so I'm gonna tag that. Again, speak up if that's controversial. Cecile, is this a work in progress that's going to continue to be a work in progress indefinitely?
It's blocked for now. We found a bug in cloud provider Azure for IPv6, so waiting for that to get fixed.
Cool. Is
So-
there any, by adding it to the milestone, will that help us to push for unblockage? No?
No, I think it's already being worked on. I think you can just leave it out for now.
Cool. This is a long standing PR. I'm gonna skip over this for now. It's not super important. The description is in the PR. I'm unfamiliar with this. Willie, looks like you're a reviewer. Can I pick on you and ask if you know about this one?
It's a unit test, so it shouldn't take too much. But Celestic hasn't gotten back to me in a while. I'm not sure. I think we can probably leave it out for now. It's just
I think I'd agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay, this is interesting. We've got a 3-week-old Dependabot. Should we close the story on this one somehow?
So Helm should be getting in, but I doubt the next one would not, I guess.
Can you clarify? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Sorry. So the PR saying Dependabot dependencies bump Helm version to V3. I think that is the one which would be getting in, which could go in this release. I think it's just waiting for an approval.
Oh, I see. Okay. Then it probably just got lost. So the only thing that sort of blipped on my radar is the fact that a Dependabot PR has taken this long to merge. That suggests something interesting is going on.
Well, it was waiting for CAPI to be upgraded.
I see. Okay. So
I would have approved
this was
it by
blocked
now,
on
but
1.4.
I would have approved it by now, but I touched it, so someone else should approve it. But I force pushed it, so I'm hands off now.
I'm gonna actually look at the code before I do this. Is this a manual thing that we have to do with these Dependabot PRs? Okay, cool.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's
like when we bump Ginkgo. We have
that's
to
not
touch the
ideal,
Ginkgo.
but
Yeah.
I get it. Okay, cool. Thank you, Nawaz. So I'll just let the review CI tag that with the milestone then. So for folks who don't know, when PRs land, we have some automation to retroactively tag PRs that land in the main branch with the active milestone. So if you are concerned that PRs will land in main without the milestone tag happening proactively, they will get that tag by the CI. Okay, is anyone actively looking at this confidential VM PR? I think go ahead.
I started reviewing it, Jack, but yeah, I think it should definitely be added to this milestone.
Cool. This may not land, so I'll skip over this. The theme with my PRs. Let's see here. Does anyone know about this tilt file update PR?
Yeah, I've been taking a look at that one a little bit. That one, the contributor hasn't been active on it for a few weeks. I did just
Cool.
bump that like last week, but it's a small thing, so I don't know how critical it would be to add to the milestone.
Okay, cool. I think let's let's wait on the reemergence of the contributor to reconsider. And Willie cluster class for managed clusters, is that blocked?
Yeah, it's still blocked on it being implemented in CAPI. So, but looks like Richard is starting to work on it again. But I don't think we should add it to the milestone yet.
Cool. And then Matt, this is your prototype SDK conversion PR, so we'll keep that untagged, right?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I think that's the way to go.
Okay, great. That was a very risky exercise, tagging those over a period of so many minutes, but I will now, hopefully my active JavaScript session will do its thing. You can do it. Great, you can do it. Okay, so now our milestone, we had a 45-30 ratio. Let's see what it is now. It's gonna be not quite as 46-38, not too bad. Okay, so we've got 10 minutes left. Let's just take a few minutes and kick any of these out as appropriate. So let me make these nice and big. Everyone's try to do your part. If you identify something that for reasons in the last few weeks no longer qualifies it for the milestone, speak up and I'll go ahead and kick it out. Nawaz, go ahead.
I don't know if the second one, the fixed diff for authorized IP ranges, is active.
Great. Did anyone have any concerns about kicking this out? Okay.
The migrate to
actively being worked on.
the migrate to SDK resource manager one. We've talked about this in the past. It needs to be broken down. And there's no way for sure that everything, I mean, that scope is basically everything. And there's no way that's going to get done. So I would suggest removing that from the milestone until there's perhaps a sub breakout item that may get in there. But yeah, I mean, everything here, I think we kind of decided we wanted to wait until the ASO POC before we even really start to convert that stuff.
Cool. I'm convinced. This is November 10th. I am on the hook for reviewing it. Is it? I guess I will just give myself more of a chance. I can't off the top of my head recall what's stalling that, but unless this is just an issue, in which case, go ahead, Nawaz.
I think we can also remove the depender part.
This one right here?
Mhm.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to look into this.
But that shouldn't be a lot of work, right? Or might it be?
This is related to CodeGen, CodeGen workflow, which we have defined. It's not really updating the dependencies present in hack tools and hack tools co-mod. So it might need some investigation and checking. So I would suggest it would be safer to remove it now, and then if we get cycles, we can add it in later.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. So Dave, for some background, there are two Go modules in the CAPC code base. So this is the Go module that supports various CI.
Okay, gotcha.
Matt, you're raising your hand.
Appropriately named hack, huh? How did that come about? Hack.
Yeah, it's actually just jargon. It's standard jargon in open source
Convention.
land. Yeah.
I was going to say Azure Go auto rest can probably be taken off the milestone too, because realistically, we're not going to get to that point this time around.
Okay.
Yeah, and on that one, I actually also updated the date as well to be past the milestone. So that aligns with that.
I don't see Jonathan here, but I have some recollection of this is making progress. I'll keep this in the milestone. I know that it I think it unblocks a couple things, so I think it's priority. Pretty confident this is going to land, right, John?
Yep.
Great. Willie, do you know anything about this one? Actually, I'm going back.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask about everyone because we got 6 minutes left. I'm going to just pause and let someone raise hand and tell me what gets kicked out because it'll take too long to go through all these. So everybody just look through these, and if you have something interesting. Matt, are you raising your hand now, or is that vestigial?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to lower it.
All good. Go ahead, Willie.
Yeah, the toke cluster one, that's related to the PR that John was talking about, where the contributor hasn't been responsive for, so maybe we can kick that one out.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. Another one where it's add unit test for Azure converters rules.go. That one's also like the contributor is not responsive, so or hasn't been around. So yeah, I'll try to follow up on it, but yeah.
I think honestly a lot of these are not going to make it, but let's just call it. We'll have a better confidence level, say 2 weeks from now, when there's just literally not enough time. So if that's okay with folks, 56 minutes is a lot of time to talk about CAPZ. So everybody's been great.
Sounds good.
All right. Happy rest of your day, evening, folks.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Everybody
Jack.
online.
Thanks, Jack.